So now we're just going to do some practice using that same method, the method 1, which is the trial and error, otherwise known as logic and reasoning trinomials with a leading coefficient other than 1. And I'm going to talk through some of the things that you may see and some of the techniques that you can use to think through some things. Now, some situations that occur. Now, this one was one of my favorite situations, and I have mentioned it earlier in the first video on this, and that is, since this is prime, I know it has to be just 1 and 2, so it's 2x and x, and then I'm going to go ahead and do, that's 1 and 6 and 2 and 3 are my choices. I know that my products need to add to 7, so when I talk about my products, remember I'm talking about that inner and that outer, so the OI, and I can either just, like I said, just plug it in and try it, see if it works, or I can think my way through, which of course is always my favorite. And I see that if I multiply this by 3, if I multiply 2 by 3, it's a big number, or getting, it's 6, so it's going to be bigger. So I'm going to try it the other way and put the 3 here and the 2 here. That gives me a 3x and a 4x. I add those up to 7x, so that tells me that I've got them in the right place. Now again, that sign tells me that the signs have to be the same. The first sign tells me that they're both positive. And that's all there is to these. You do have to think. You can't take any breaks with your brain at this point. Let's see, let's do the next one. And the next one is bigger. We've got 12 and 12. Now, the good news is we don't have to do this twice. So those are all of our choices. I'm going to do these off to the side. Don't have to think through them because we already did that once. So there are our choices. Now, what are we going to try? Again, I sort of go by that standard. If I'm not sure, I will try the things that are the set of factors that's closest together. And now I look at this and say, what do I want to try? Well, here's what I know, and I look at this and I let it help me a little bit if I can, and that is that second sign tells me I'm subtracting my products. What is it subtracting to? It's subtracting to 7. So I know I need a number bigger than 7, so that's not a big deal. But I do know then that these products need to be sort of far apart because I need to subtract and have a 7 be the difference between two numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and try putting the bigger here and the littler here. Now, I look at that second sign again, and that's telling me that negative. So that's telling me that the signs have to be different. And the first sign tells me that the bigger one is going to get the positive. So now I look at this, I did the little OI. So 16 minus 9 is definitely 7, so that's good. And now we're going to go ahead and place the signs. We know that they're different. We know the bigger product is supposed to get the plus, so that's going to get the plus. That's going to get the minus. We go ahead and place those where we're supposed to, and of course FOIL them back to try. And now we'll look at this one and these two. Now, this one has something that's a little bit interesting to me. And that is that the third number is prime. So if it's prime, I know that has to be 5 and 1. So I'm just going to place that and work backwards. I know I've only got two choices with the 8. It's 1 and 8, or it's 2 and 4. So again, we need to add. We're adding to 14. So I don't want any numbers that are too big. So I'm going to go ahead and try the 2 and the 4 and see how that works for me. If I put the 4 here, I can see that that's going to give me a 20. And that's not good. So I'm not going to use 4 there. I'm going to put the 4 here and put the 2 here. So let's go ahead and see what that gives me. So that gives me a 4x. and that gives me a 10x. I add those together, I get 14x, I'm good. Now I know that the signs are the same because that's positive, and the first sign tells me what that sign is, so they're both plus. Oops, sorry about that. Let's clean that up a little bit because that looks pretty nasty. Put the signs back in there. And there we go. Again, foil it back to make sure. Now we see this one. And again, we've got a nice little prime number there, so I'm just going to put those in. It has to be 2 and 1. And 11 is also prime. So we know it's got to be either 1 and 11 or 11 and 1. So we put 11 here and 1 here. Well, that's 11p, and that is 2p. That's 13, so that's wrong. So we'll try again. And we'll switch the order. So we'll put the 1 here and the 11 here. Again, 1p and 22p. That's 23. So that didn't work either. Those were our only two choices. So think about what that means. And what it means for us is that it's not factorable, otherwise known as, we can also call it prime if we want to. Okay, so let's look at this. This is 1 and 4, or 2 and 2. This is prime, so that's good news. So we're going to go ahead and put our parentheses. We know that it's got to be 7 and 1 or 1 and 7. Doesn't really matter the order. And now we just have to decide if we want the 2 and 2 or the 1 and the 4. Again, we look to see that the signs are different. We know we need to subtract to get 3. So sometimes you're going to be able to see this right off the bat, and sometimes you're not. I'm going to go ahead and just put the 2 in, just for demonstration purposes if you don't see it. So here are my, that's 14x, that's 2x, and 14x and 2x, 14 minus 2 is obviously not 3. So we'll try it again. There's our double paren. So we're going to put in the 1 and the 7. So we know the 2 and the 2 don't work. So now we're going to try the 4 and the 1. If we put the 4 here, do you see that when we multiply these outers together, we would get 28, which is huge. And if we put the 1 there, we're getting a 1. 28 minus 1 is not happening. So we do the 1 and the 4. And of course, remember that's an x. So that's 4x. That's 7x. 7 minus 4 is 3, so we know they're good. And now we just place the signs. We know that the bigger number, remember our original, that first sign was a negative, so our bigger number has to be negative. And since they're different signs, this one, the smaller product, has to be positive. So this negative comes from here, this positive comes from here. And of course, again, you know, your last step is going to be to go ahead and take this and foil it out to make sure that you're good. Making sure that you're careful that that's a plus. There you go. Okay, this one I kind of went back to some stuff that's a little bit more simple just because I'm using the two variables again. But both the first term and the third term are prime, which is also, you know, always good news. So we've got 2b and b, and then we know that we've got to have the a in here. So the only thing that we're not sure of, remembering that our factors have to be 1 and 3, is where the 1 goes, where the 3 goes. So which order are we putting it in? So we could put, we see that we need to subtract to 5. That should be our first clue. So that, remember, tells us if we have to subtract to 5, that means we need a number that is bigger than 6. So we may want to try to put the 3 here. Excuse me, that's bigger than 5. So that's 6ab. And then if we put the 3 here, we would put the 1 there. so that's 1AB. So 6AB minus 1AB is 5AB. Now we just have to do the signs. The negative here, that second sign, tells us that the signs are different. This first negative tells us the larger product is negative, so that means the 6AB is negative, the 1AB is positive. And of course, go ahead and multiply those guys back to check it. Okay, let's just do a couple more. Let's look at this one. So the choices we have here are 1 and 4, and 2 and 2. 30 has a few more choices. It's got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 doesn't work, 5 times 6, and now we're back to 6, so we know that those are all of our choices. So we have to decide if we want to try the 1 and 4, the 2 and 2, and again, you know, I always kind of go with that, the closest ones. And the nice thing about this is since it's the same, we only really have to try each of these in one position because the 2 is always the same. Messed up with that 6, sorry. All right, now let's go ahead and make a decision, determine what we want to do. So we could try the 5 and the 6. We want to remember that we want to subtract to 2. So let's just go ahead and try things and see what happens. So let's try the 5 and the 6. So that's 10. Oh, well, that was like too easy. And 12. So we have 12 minus 10 is 2. So we've got the right number combination. All we need to do is get the signs correctly. So remember that second sign tells us the signs are different. The first one tells us the bigger product is negative, so that's negative, that's positive, so this negative comes from here, this positive comes from here, and we're done. Now let's go ahead and look at this one, and this one has got a few things going on, and the first thing, and I haven't really done much of this, so I want to make sure we get one of these in here. We know we have to look for GCF. So we can see 18. 18 is the smallest number, and so we've got 1 and 18. Let's go ahead and do this. We've got 2 and 9, and we've got 3 and 6. So the reason I'm doing that really quick is because it's going to help us figure out what factors we have that we want to see, you know, what works in these. And when we make it visual like that, sometimes it's really easier to see. And hopefully you see that 9 is the biggest number that goes into all three of these now. So 9 is part of our GCF. And we see that we've got, you know, the y squared. So that's going to come out. And when we do the division, we're left with 2y squared.
Look, I already told the cops I didn't see anything except...
And here we've got 7y and then plus 3. So now we look at our new little trinomial here to see if we can factor it further. And we can't really tell just by looking at it, so we're going to try. The good news is we see we've got prime numbers here, so that's nice. So we're going to just do 2y and 1y. And we know that the 3 has to be 1 and 3. We just have to figure out where. We can see that we need to add to 7. So I'm going to put the bigger one here, 6y. And I'll put the smaller number there, that's 1y. And when I add those together, we get 7y, so we're good. We go back to our polynomial and we see that both the second sign and the first sign are both positive. So the second sign tells us they're the same. The first sign tells us what that is. So they are both positive, and we're done. So you need to get out there and you need to practice this over and over again. That's the only way to get good at it.